Hello, hello, hello. I'm a little bit under the weather today, but I've been working on some cool Metal Zone mods, and I wanted to show you just a few simple things that you can actually do to a Metal Zone to make it something different, something better. You may remember several years back, maybe 10 years or so, 12 years maybe, I wrote a book about modifications, and some of those were containing the Metal Zone type of deal. The reality of it is, I can do a lot better. No, that's not true. The reality of it is that, those were mods like 12 years ago or something. It was a long time ago. There's other things you can do to it besides just to pull a few capacitors out. For example, I'm going to show you a cool mod. I think it's kind of cool. You can turn a Metal Zone into an Overdrive. So let's look at that real quick. Alright, so this is the schematic for the MT-2 Metal Zone. I'm not going to go like too in depth because it will bore a big portion of the people who really just want to know how to make their pedal sound better or different. And there's some other pages on the internet that really tell you exactly like what's going on in the different EQ sections. So, and I say EQ sections because these three parts here are actually adding EQ around the clipping. The clipping that's going on in the pedal stock is actually right here. These are the diodes. It's clipping to ground, which kind of gives it a hard clipping sort of sound. Just kind of a general overview. What's going on is that the circuit is going through here into this buffer right here. If your signal is bypassed, then it just keeps going out through this buffer. That's a switch there, so it basically goes right through that and then out through another buffer. When it's in the off position, you're going through 3 buffers on this pedal. Now, when you're on, you're going through this buffer and then down, go through that switch here. That's a JFET, it's acting as a switch. This is a gain stage that's affecting some EQ before it's boosting up a specific frequency. I think it's like 1K right there. Going through this stage, which is another gain stage. You can see the distortion control right there, which controls how much gain you have at this stage. In conjunction with these R41 and C30, signal goes out, clips to ground through these diodes, and continues on to this stage, which adds 2 different frequencies via these little gyrator transistors. Then goes through this stage, which inverts the signal. I'm not sure why they inverted the signal, but for some reason they did. It goes into the EQ, which is kind of a cool stage. I mean, it's a little typical with the lows, general gyrator type stage. The high operates a little bit differently, so it's still boosting and cutting. And then the mids, so that's all this stuff here. So signal comes down and goes in. The EQ does its magic, goes into the next stage, which is the mid control. And the mid control is pretty cool because it's kind of parametric. So you can control the frequency. You can't really control the Q. You can within the circuit itself, but there's no external control for the Q. After the mids do its magic, it goes out through the volume control, which is right here. And then it goes through the switch and then back out through that last op-amp buffer right here. So continue that circuit, or that path goes through this last buffer and then out. So that's the general circuit in a nutshell. Let's say we want to do, let's turn this into an overdrive. The first thing I always do to get rid of some of the nastiness of the EQ circuit, in the old books, you'll see this incorporated in what I called at the time the diesel mod, I think, or something like that. I really was running out of names when I was writing the book, and so I just pulled something out of my butt. The first thing we're going to actually do is take out C35, which is this capacitor right there. We're also going to take out C25, which is right there. Now, it's kind of funny to mention that when I did this mod, there was a very, back 2005 or something, and put it in the book, there were very few people that were doing this. It's because I was going through everything that as an engineer you would traditionally think to do. I was just getting rid of the EQ stages in a very simple way. Not totally getting rid of them, but changing them just to sound better. The easy way to do that was just removing it. As an engineer, you're not going to do it this way. I just pulled the parts out to see what they would do. I just wanted to see what would happen at the time, because I wasn't for sure, and I wasn't spicing it, using a program called Spice to simulate it. So I just pulled it out. Also, let's change C34, which is right here. Let's change that to a 0.047. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually just going to totally remove D004 and D003. I'll show you where all this stuff is in just a second on the circuit board. So remove those out totally, and we're actually going to put clipping diodes right here in place of where this capacitor is. And I'll show you how we do that in just a minute as well. Now by doing that, you're going to have a ton of gain. So you'll notice on the gain knob, as you turn it up, it's going to just get a lot more hiss because it's not really going to clip anymore. It's just still going to soft clip. Here's a cool change I like to do. Take R41 and C30, change the R41, which is a resistor, to 4.7K, change C30 to a 0.047K, and that moves it into more of a good warm mid-range frequency for the overdrive, and makes a cool sound. Now another change that you can do if you're still having a lot of noise problems, let's just get rid of C17. So remove C17 right here. Remove Q007, and then same thing over here, remove C25 and remove the transistor Q008. And what that's basically just going to convert all of this stage into just basically a simple non-inverting gain stage. It just adds just a touch of gain, not a ton, just a little bit of gain. This is showing where it's at on the PCB. So this is a copy of the layout showing all the locations of the parts on the metal zone. We're looking for C35. It's going to be a capacitor. All right, so C35 is right here. We go down, C25 is right here. C34 is right here. Okay, now we talked about removing some transistors. Q008 right here. Just gonna desolder it, take it out completely, don't replace it with anything. Q7 is right here. Again, we're just desoldering it, taking it out completely, don't replace it with anything. Okay, so the capacitor I talked about that we're going to remove and put diodes in its place. We're actually going to put a diode on top of it as well. And that's right here. And that is that's C28. So we're just going to remove it, and I'll show you what we're going to do with the diodes. And put that in its place. D3 and D4, these are the stock clipping diodes. We're just going to remove those completely. Don't jump or anything, just totally remove them, leave them blank. Okay, so on the main gain stage, we changed R41 and C30. R40, which is right here. Both of those are right next to each other. R41 we changed to a 4.7K resistor. C30 we changed to a 0.047 microfarad capacitor. So just remove those and put the new parts in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take, I'm just going to use regular 1N41/48. If you look at it, you'll notice how there's a black line on each end, and you want those two to go opposite ways when we solder this up. That would be symmetrical clipping. If we want it to be asymmetrical, kind of like a Boss SD1 for example, we're going to put two in line like so, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So here, I know this is messy, but this is like a little helper, like a third hand sort of thing. You can buy them cheap like on Amazon. I think Small Bear Electronics has them as well. Mouser probably has them. First thing we're going to do, let's go ahead and make it asymmetrical. So to do that, I'm going to make sure the black lines, I'm going to make sure they're going the exact same way, and I'm going to wire them together. I'm going to use my little device here. Then I'm going to take my soldering iron, heat it up just a little bit. I'll solder that. This is kind of hard to do at an angle. Okay, that's step one. If you notice, the black line is going that way. So black line's pointing that way, the other one, the black line's pointing that way. So this other diode, we want it to point the opposite way. So we're going to put it like that, and then we're going to wire that together as well. Then solder. That's going to give us something like that. I'm going to solder those together. Let that cool for a second. Now we're going to snip off the legs we don't need. Now for the capacitor, I'm going to use a 100 picofarad. I think the stock was like a 47. I'm going to take out a little bit more highs, take out a little of the harshness, and I'm really just going to attach it across the part that I soldered there, and and the part that I soldered there. It's going to look something like that. Let's go ahead and solder that. And that's what it gives us. So let's chop off the bits we don't need. Where these two connect, we don't need that. We'll get rid of that. All we need is two legs. So it's a little messy doing this at an angle. That's kind of what we end up with. And these two legs are what's going to go into the hole where that capacitor was. Now I showed you the layout on the image there. As you can see, these are all the parts that correspond to that layout. The silver things are capacitors. So are these little bottle looking things, those electrolytics. The orange things are also capacitors. Those little things with the colors or resistors. Now, if you don't know this stuff, you probably shouldn't be doing this modification. You probably want to seek out some other videos that kind of show the basics of DIY type stuff. But really, yeah, you're just desoldering, taking it out. There's that capacitor, of course, that we're going to remove and put that diode assembly all in those two holes. And that's the basic gist of it. It's a pretty simple mod. If you've soldered stuff before, it's pretty simple in general, but it's a cool thing you can do to a metal zone to actually make it usable. And it's a fun thing to do, like if you're showing up to a country or blues gig and you have a metal zone on your board and it's actually an overdrive. It's a fun thing to do just to mess with people. So all right, we'll see you next time.